This mutation is called Equivalent Exchange and it is being played on Void Thrashing. We have two mutators active. We have Diffusion and we have Just Die. So both a very nasty set of mutators, but this mutation actually features the newest co-op commander over here. And as we can see, Mengsk has already put down one bunker and he's going to start clearing away at these rocks over here. So the one thing to note is that Diffusion and there is another mutator that exists in the game called Double-Edged. They are very, very similar. In this case, Diffusion means that your units, as long as they're outside range, they will not take the damage that they are dealing to whatever target they are hitting. So, while the players get set up, let's have a look at the masteries. And again, this is the new Mengsk co-op commander. I have already updated the co-op observer interface for this, so I think everything should be fine. If there are any glitches that you notice, just do let me know, and I can fix them for subsequent casts. But we have here Mengsk, he's gone for the conscript support for the mandate, he's gone for the terrible damage increase, and he's gone for the starting mandate. And by far the most important mastery over here is the starting mandate mastery. This thing allows you to fast expand pretty much at the start of the game. As you can see, he sort of dropped down his bunker and he's fast building his command center, and this command center will be done at 2 minutes and 30 seconds. Basically, it'll be moved into position, and that is pretty much, I think, the fastest expand that you can have in the game right now. So Mengsk is pretty much the best commander for the expands here. Kerrigan has gone for the Kerrigan energy regeneration with Vespene cost and immobilization wave. I think there's a particular breakpoint over here that I'm not aware of that they've gone for that kind of selection. And we have the primary ability improvement with the fast evolution. So what we can see over here is that Kerrigan will probably be going for a very solo Kerrigan centric build. Now this might be a little bit tricky with the Diffusion mutator that is active, but overall it should be okay. So the first attack wave has spawned now, and we'll start targeting the player's base over here. And now there was, I think, a poke by one of these workers here to just see what the enemy composition is. And as we can see here, it is an explosive threats enemy composition. Now, when I did get the submission, I was told that the first game they played was very, very clean, very, very polished, but that was because the enemy composition they had was much easier. This enemy composition, though, was significantly worse, and they decided to submit this one instead because I think it would be a little bit more interesting. As we can see, it is already being a little bit chaotic. The Zerglings have cleared off the spawn of the Dogs of War from Mengsk, and now Kerrigan's out to try and deal with some of these things. As you can see here, all these workers were converted into conscripts or troopers, I think they're called. They call it troopers. Yeah, they're called troopers, and they were able to deal with this attack wave. Speaking of which, Mengsk in general is probably one of the best commanders to handle early attack with, because all your workers can actually pick up some guns and start attacking. We can see here Kerrigan's already starting to work away on some of these units. She has to be a little bit careful. Remember, the Diffusion does make it a little bit tricky. It does kind of suck, but as long as there are enemy units nearby, it means the damage is not... It does not get focused a lot on your unit. As you can see here, as the number of units start to dwindle, damage starts to get split up evenly over here, so that does make it a little bit tricky. You can see Kerrigan has already put down some nice worms, and she seems to be all okay. And we can see here now Mengsk is going to help Kerrigan try and deal with these rocks over here. But yeah, Diffusion is pretty nasty. It used to lag the engine out a lot, and I think it still happens. So I think map selection is also an important part of when Diffusion comes up. Void Thrashing hasn't really been seen in quite a while. We do see a lot of part and parcel, and Cradle of Death seems to be coming up very often. But Void Thrashing is one of the easiest missions in the game, and I think the reason why it was selected was purely because of this Diffusion mutator. Diffusion, when you play if you play on a map which has a lot of enemy units that seem to be clumped up, Diffusion will lag out your computer regardless of how good of a computer you have. And you can see here now, the first set of things have spawned and taken out that Omega Worm on this side. Kerrigan now does seem to get focused down by some of these units, but does use her Psionic Shift ability. Does end up cleaning up this attack wave with relative ease, as well with a nice drop of the Assimilation Aura as well, so that gets a little bit more value for the Mengsk. But yeah, so I was talking about Diffusion. Diffusion does slow down the engine regardless of how good of a computer you have. So I think one of the reasons why Blizzard has chosen Void Thrashing is because there are not really that many enemy units, and it's definitely not a very spammy kind of mission. Imagine if you were playing this on Dead of Night, I'm pretty sure it would be a very, very unpleasant experience for a lot of the players. And we can see now we have the Imperial Witness on this side and the Imperial Witness on here as well. And this is one of the other things about Mengsk, is getting out that Imperial Witness. These two Imperial Witnesses will increase Mengsk's mandate, or it's basically an energy bar basically for his abilities. It increases the gather rate, because all these units now are, I think they get something called the Indoctrinated buff. Yeah, it's called the Indoctrinated buff. And that basically increases Mengsk's mandate regeneration, which allows him to spam his abilities much more frequently. And you can see already now he's at 100 energy, and he has his nuclear annihilation ability ready. The nuclear annihilation ability, I think, is pretty much one of the coolest abilities, coolest looking abilities in the game. You see a bunch of 40 missiles that come in and followed by one final nuke. I think it's very, very amusing. It appeals to a lot of the sadists, all the co-op players over here. And for the most part, I think all seems to be okay for the players. We already have a couple of command centers, which is the other thing I wanted to talk about Mengsk. Mengsk does require a few extra command centers to be able to produce and keep up with the unit production that he needs to make sure that he doesn't float that many minerals. So you can see here, Mengsk very naturally floats a lot of minerals. So you will need a few command centers to build some more troopers, and these troopers are going to be cannon fodder for the most part. You see there's a bunch of Scourge here. Scourge are not really going to be able to do anything. I'm going to kind of feel bad for Kerrigan, because Kerrigan's overlords are going to be the things that are going to be taking the brunt of those Scourge. But we also do have a Mutalisc here, and this Mutalisc has picked up some of these troopers as well, which is somewhat annoying, but there are, again, another bunch of units over here that can do this. The other thing to also note is, see this here, is that Mengsk troopers can actually construct combat structures. So they cannot build stuff like enlistment centers, but they can definitely build bunkers, and, or in this case I think they're called supply bunkers, and they can also build artillery and missile turrets. And you can see here the first immobilization wave has gone down. A lot of the... This has, I believe, taken off all the just die stacks from all the units that are in this area over here, which is very, very useful, because now Kerrigan can just come in and clean up. But she has to be really careful with Diffusion. Diffusion does mean that enemy units are much more tankier. I think a lot of people underestimate how tanky Diffusion can make enemy units, because the more enemy units that are around, the tankier the enemy units are. It is a very, very interesting kind of interaction with the units that are available in a certain area. But we can see here that Mengsk has dropped his Dogs of War. It's going to take me time to call out the names, because I'm still... Mengsk is really new, but I'm going to try and use the correct names, so the casting might be a little bit slower than normal. But the Dogs of War has come down, and that has ended up cleaning up the enemy units in this base, and now the Void Thrashers are remaining, and those things are really as well. You can see here, we have the lists on this side, and now the Void Thrashers have respawned. And yes, Just Die does make the Void Thrashers respawn as well, and now we can see the artillery from the Earthslayers are here, and there are actually quite a few Earthslayers. Surprisingly, Mengsk is still flowing 1,000 minerals after all of these Earthslayers have been made, which is very, very interesting in itself. I would have thought that they would actually run out of resources by now, but apparently no. Now, also notice what Mengsk is doing is he's loading his artillery with workers over here, or with troops. So you can load the artillery with either laborers or troopers. It doesn't really matter that much, and you can see here that Contaminated Strike is being dropped over here, causing all these units to get feared. Contaminated Strike, by the way, can only be triggered if you have at least one of these artilleries in here. And you can see there's more than one. But notice how Mengsk is loading these artillery, the Earthsclear ordinances, with his troopers or workers. It doesn't really matter, you can load them with anything, it doesn't really make a difference. For every one worker that you load into an artillery, the number of volleys that the artillery fires per 30 seconds goes up by 1. So the base, as in 0 workers loaded into the artillery, it fires one volley. It fires one volley per 30 seconds. So when you put one worker in, or one conscript in, you will get 2 volleys in 30 seconds, and that goes up to a final count of 5 volleys in 30 seconds, which makes them very, very effective. You can see over here that Kerrigan is moving into position. She does have her immobilization wave ready, and down goes the immobilization wave, and now Mengsk is going to start completely shelling this side with his artillery. And you see he's still flowing a lot of resources over here, but that is also why he has these extra enlistment centers. He needs to produce the workers to be able to load into these artillery so that he gets the maximum value. And the one thing I have noticed is that there is an enlistment center, not enlistment center, there's an Imperial Witness on this side, but as far as I know, I don't think the Imperial Witness gives the indoctrinated buff to the units that are inside or loaded inside the Earth Splitters. So I don't believe you get that increased mandate regeneration. Do let me know in the comments if that is the case. I don't think it does affect the loaded workers in bunkers or the artilleries. I think it only affects the units that are actually sitting within range, so as long as they have that buff. I think that is the case. I am not sure. Do let me know in the comments if that is correct or not. But now we can see that the last Void Thrashers now are still alive. The just died buff keeps them respawning, and now we have an attack wave of Banelings and Zerglings. It is going to start harassing Kerrigan's expansion, which is going to be a little bit of a problem. Actually, this is not even Kerrigan's expansion. That's interesting. This is Mengsk's expansion. That also explains why he's filling all those resources. But you can see here, the best ability in the game, by far, is a Nuclear Annihilation. There is no ability that is better than that. So Kerrigan's actually one basing. I was not aware. I was not paying attention to that. I just naturally assumed that Kerrigan would be using a 2-base build, but you know, this is a solo Kerrigan build, and Kerrigan has gotten picked off, I believe, because of the Hydralisk Frenzy combined with the Diffusion Mutator. I think that was the reason why Kerrigan did end up getting cleaned up. And that Hybrid also does get killed off. And now I think there are only a bunch of Broodlords and that one Void Thrasher that are remaining. Again, a little bit tricky. Kerrigan has added a few Zerglings. I think that is just to soak up the Diffusion damage, or just to provide a little bit of tanking ability for some of these Hydralisks over here. And the Broodlord gets picked off, and last but not least, that Void Thrasher goes down. And now, I believe the Archangel is alive and has moved out of range because I think it was getting picked off by the artillery. I don't know if these players are going to go and try and deal with the bonus. It's, again, not really important. Bonus experience is not really that much. Now, they are going to start... What are they shelling? Okay, they're still shelling on this side. Okay, there are a lot of... How many artillery is there? It's a production. How many Earthsplitter Ordnance? There are 54 Earthsplitter Ordnances on the map right now. And now we can see here, Mengsk is just going to completely start shelling, completely start shredding all of these enemies. Kerrigan jumps in as well with the Immobilization Wave, Assimilation, Aura combo, and pretty much all the enemy units here have lost their Just Die stacks. And now there's just one more set that needs to be dealt with. You can see these hybrids now, they're just trying to work their way through here. And this thing is just going to get completely shelled by the artillery, and eventually it's going to get picked up. No, it doesn't manage to get aggroed by Kerrigan over here, but Kerrigan unfortunately does get the Corruption debuff and ends up going down to the bunch of hybrids that are here. As you can see, Mengsk is just being completely merciless with his shelling on this side. And now there are a bunch of Zerglings and Banelings that are coming up over here. They will end up cleaning up, I think, all these Omega Worms, because these Banelings like to auto-detonate on these units. The good thing is, though, because these Banelings have taken off they have attacked the Omega Worms over here, it does mean there's a little bit less damage that gets hit onto Mengsk's Earth Splitters. And we have a bunch of Vipers and Scourge, but Mengsk doesn't really care about that. Unfortunately, the artillery does not hit air units. Now there are just a bunch of units over here that are just waiting, and again they're going to start attacking this side. And now they are going to enter Kerrigan's base, which is going to be a little bit unfortunate, but Kerrigan is in position already. She's gonna go and deal with it. Yeah, she's gonna go and deal with it. And now, yeah, uses her Psionic Shift ability, gives her a little bit of invulnerability, which is very useful. Now she's gonna end up cleaning up pretty much the whole bit of this attack wave, except for the air units. There are a bunch of swarm hosts over here that are going to cause a few problems. And Kerrigan tries to get out of the way there. She's taking a little bit too much damage, and remember, Diffusion is very, very nasty. Once you combine it with the Chain Lightning ability, it can get very, very tricky, and you can deal a lot more damage than you would normally be expecting to deal over here. So that is why Kerrigan has to be a little bit careful. He's going to be a Mega Worm, and here now these Mutalisks have taken out a few of Mengsk's structures. Overall, I think, how many structures have gone down? Total of 17 of these Earth Splitters have been cleared out by the enemy units on this by this side. I've also started to realize that the structure's last step can get really, really messy for Mengsk, because he just has a bunch of units, like his Dogs of War, for example, does actually also pick on here. Interesting to see. Anyway, the last three Void Thrashers are around. This Void Thrasher has gone down. Now there are 2 more left. I think these 2 guys still have the Just Die stacks available, and Sergeant Hammer's Fortress is taking a lot of damage. There is another artillery strike here. This should end up cleaning up pretty much all the ground units on here. But again, there needs to be a few more units to go and deal with the air units in this composition over here. And as you can see here, the players are just having fun. The massive artillery is going to be just a fun thing to do. Now we can see the artillery just shelling away at these Void Thrashers over here. Again, the Sergeant Hammer's Fortress is at 400 HP, and there is a lot of fire here onto the Sergeant Hammer's Fortress. Fire in Sergeant Hammer's Fortress, and fire onto Sergeant Hammer's Fortress on the Void Thrashers. And now I think this Void Thrasher will end up getting picked off, and the Just Die stack is gone. And now this is the last Void Thrasher. There is 280 HP that is left onto Sergeant Hammer's Fortress. We'll have to scramble over here. A bunch of Omega Worms do get dropped over here. There is still an attack wave that are harassing that top side, which is causing a few problems. Now there's some more artillery shelling as well. Thrasher is not letting up on Sergeant Hammer's Fortress. It just wants to take that thing down, and it is so close. It has now respawned from the Just Die stack, so its Just Die stack has been removed over here. Again, lots of swarm hosts are just taking out a lot of Mengsk's artillery. A bit of a problem because there are a bunch of hybrids as well on here that haven't gotten picked up by the artillery, unfortunately. Thrasher now is at 50% HP, 220 HP left on Sergeant Hammer's Fortress. I think that's pretty much the end because the next set of artillery strikes will end up cleaning up the final Void Thrasher. As that Void Thrasher gone down, and GG from both sides, and Sergeant Hammer's Fortress saved, only just, but saved nonetheless. And that is GG.